Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brew and you are with talkTV. Now, breaking news. Now, just during the news broadcast there, the Nottingham killer, Valdo Calocane, has just been sentenced to a hospital order for fatally stabbing 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley and 65-year-old caretaker at a school, Ian Coates, in Nottingham on a rampage last June. Mr Justice Turner at Nottingham Crown Court says the order is necessary to protect the public from serious harm. Now, the 32-year-old had pleaded guilty to 3 charges of manslaughter and 3 of attempted murder after the court heard he had paranoid schizophrenia at the time of the attack. Well, still with me in the studio is Chris Parry. He's a former NATO and Royal Navy commander. Now, we've learnt lots about this case, particularly a lot of being able to be published in the last couple of days, Chris, because we had a guilty plea for manslaughter for these 3 tragic deaths in Nottingham last year when he went on this knife rampage and then stole a car and then attempted to kill people. He accepted an attempted murder charge for them, but made a plea for for manslaughter for the 3 who died. Some of the families very angry and understandably upset that this man wasn't going to face trial for the murders that he committed. Yeah, I think you stab someone in a frenzied attack, you're committing murder, not manslaughter. Now, diminished responsibility due to his mental health was accepted by the prosecution. We've just seen him sentenced by Mr Justice Turner there in Nottingham Court, sentenced to a hospital order. Now, I've seen nothing in there that says it's an all-life order or like... there is no doubt at all. There is, there's loads of evidence that was brought up in court and has now been made public about his long-term battles with his mental health. And again, abject failures again and again and again by the authorities, by the police and others to deal with him when there were numerous attacks. Attack on a police officer. He hadn't been caught for 9 months after that. Attacks on flatmates. Not taking the medication when he was supposedly, care in the community and violent assaults and nothing being done. These are 3 deaths and another 3 could have been deaths that didn't need to happen if the authorities had acted sooner. Do you think a hospital order is the right punishment?
Well, I think that's code for saying being detained at His Majesty's pleasure because of his mental capacity or incapacity. I think the issue here that's very sad, Julia, is that we see total lack of accountability, as you say, throughout the chain here. Some institution has failed, but nobody personally gets fingered when this happens.
No, it's never any one individual responsibility.
Exactly, and my own background, people are personally accountable. You know who is to blame, and I'm afraid...
Who gave that order?
Yeah, who didn't give
What
that
about,
order,
OK, I'm sure you'll have the workers in the NHS and in the police saying, we are overstretched, we've got thousands of these people. It's a matter of luck that we don't have more of these sort of deaths. These people aren't taking their medication. There's nowhere to put them. We closed down pretty much all the mental health institutions. There's a long backlog. We couldn't find this guy. Someone came on duty. It was their job to try and find this guy after he assaulted a police officer. They couldn't find him, so they went off duty, and then someone else forgot about it. We hear this when it's social workers failing to save the lives of young children from the hands of their parents or supposed carers. We see this again and again and again, and it does just keep happening. I bet you anything, though, lessons will be learnt. Don't you worry, lessons will be learnt.
Yeah, lessons are only learnt if it comes into good practice and never happens again. That's the problem. No, Julia, I'm afraid to say that personal responsibility in all of these cases is always diluted by being part of institutions. And until we name and shame people who are involved in these tragedies, nothing's going to change.
Or give them the tools, give them the facility, give them the resources to be able to do their job better.
Well, if it's about resources, it's not their fault. But that goes up the chain.
But it's someone's fault.
But that goes up the chain. If it's about resources, have people actually asked the resources? Have they categorised them? But actually, we need to have a chain of responsibility with regard to these very dangerous people who are living amongst us.
Yeah, and again, it was a deliberate policy. This care in the community, closing down. Yes, these horrible Victorian mental institutions were absolutely, horrible. But that doesn't mean that you want people necessarily on the streets and for their own safety and for their own well-being.
Well, for our safety, Julia.
But no, more importantly for us, but also for this. This isn't about, this is also, being kind as well. Look, just a bit more has come out from Mr Justice Turner in Nottingham Crown Court. Speaking on the hospital order, he said it is not possible to say for how long that will be so. I'd say it was. I'm sorry, this is the issue. I think the parents are going to be very unhappy about it. He said he is satisfied that Calocane is suffering from paranoid schizophrenia and that he will be detained in Ashworth High Security Hospital, sentenced to that hospital order for the fatal stabbing of the 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar and the 65-year-old school caretaker Ian Coates, who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, we talk about knife crime today. We're going to get a guest in just a couple of moments. And when we talk about knife crime, often we're talking about people, involved in gangland or teenagers. Not that makes any better. Often those kids don't want to be involved in those gangs or be involved in those teenage battles. But there is a feeling from a lot of people that, no, I don't live on those estates. I don't walk down those streets. I'm not in battle with these people. If I have a row with someone, it will be an angry letter to them or an angry email. It won't be someone stabbing someone. But we are all, I think, we're all afraid of, the sort of to whom it may concern stabbing. The walking down the street, these two friends were walking down the street after a night out, celebrating after their exams. A caretaker on his way to work in the morning. Someone, let's call him a madman on the streets with a weapon, being able to take their lives away from them and all the grief that's caused for their families and friends. There just seems to me to be a feeling, and we've seen the latest crime survey today, offences involving knives or sharp instruments increased by 5% last year. Robbery offences up by 12%. Theft offences up by 9%. Firearm offences up by 3%. Our streets are out of control.
Julia, a basic problem that I see every day when I'm travelling in London, for example, is the basic lack of accountability amongst officialdom. Last week, for example, there was somebody on a station platform who was clearly a danger to the public.
Yeah.
It was reported to the staff. And
shrugged.
Exactly, shrugged. What can we do?
But you know what they're going, I'm on minimum wage, what do I care? It's not my problem.
So, there's a chain of responsibility here that we need to reintroduce into our society. When members of the public are prepared to put themselves at risk to deal with things, people who sport uniforms and high-vis jackets have actually got to step into the breach. And I'm afraid to say, I bet you there was some human rights and racial issues associated with this case. Can't touch him, can't actually put pressure on him, because there are all sorts of identity issues.
Yeah, someone will have had that concern. Well, just that breaking news, if you are just tuning in, that we have seen the Nottingham killer, that rampage, that awful, awful morning in Nottingham, June last year, Valdo Calocane. He has been sentenced to a hospital order. The judge, Mr. Justice Turner at Nottingham Crown Court, said it was not possible to say for how long that would be so. Calocane is suffering from paranoid schizophrenia. He will be detained in Ashworth High Security Hospital, but he has been sentenced for fatally stabbing the 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, and also the 65-year-old school caretaker Ian Coates as well. But also, of course, he's been sentenced in relation also to the attempted murder, which he also pleaded guilty to, of 3 others as he rammed them with a car at a bus stop. Absolutely tragic case. We'll keep you up to date on any developments there. No doubt there will be reaction from the families. I think we would understandably expect that. Well, actually, strangely, keeping along the same theme, joining me right now is Andrew Dinsmore. He's a Conservative councillor in Hammersmith and Fulham, and he himself was a victim of knife crime. Good afternoon to you, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. I'm just interested, actually, I'm wondering your reaction, actually, to that sentencing just now.
It was obviously a very tragic story, and we have to trust the judge who's seen all the evidence to reach the right result. But I think it does emphasise the need to take these weapons out of circulation. And I was delighted to hear the government's announcement today that they are introducing a scheme by which they will purchase with amnesty weapons from young people to take them out of circulation. And they're also cracking down on online retailers to ban these weapons and make sure they're not readily available.
Yeah, well,
and in this case...
The trouble is, though, Andrew, they've been readily available for a very long time. There are a lot of them in the system. They're closing down a loophole in a law that they themselves brought in. I remember even at the time people say there's too many loopholes in this law. If you're not living in a jungle or planning to go to a jungle anytime soon, you don't need a zombie knife or a machete, do you?
Well, no, I readily agree, and that's why I campaigned to ban machetes. But one of the difficulties is that there are some agricultural uses for machetes. Therefore, the government just can't wade in and start banning things without listening to the relevant parties that are interested. And they've done that process thoroughly and clearly, and they've now produced a very well-drafted piece of legislation that covers the point completely.
Okay. Well, look, you yourself have been a victim of knife crime. I know we've got some footage from the CCTV footage of when you were a victim. Tell us what happened to you.
I was with my wife on the bank holiday Monday in 2022. We just had dinner. We were walking in broad daylight towards the cinema. Two men approached us on a moped, dressed entirely in black, wearing black balaclavas and with helmets on. I thought initially that they were going to take my wife's handbag, so I initially ushered her out of the way. The man in the back of the moped, as you'll see here, jumped off, pulled out an 18-inch matte black machete. He started charging towards me, saying, "Give me your watch, give me your effing watch." My wife thought that I was going to be beheaded. I thought I was going to die. I was able to get my watch off as quickly as possible. I gave it to him. He walked back towards the moped, and possibly the scariest moment was when he looked at my wife. I thought at that point he was going to attack her. Fortunately, he didn't. He got back on the moped, and you'll see at the end of the clip, my wife was so upset she actually collapses in the street afterwards. I phoned the police. Amazingly, they were on the scene within 5 minutes, including 2 armed response units. They chased the gentleman on the evening, weren't able to catch them, but due to amazing CCTV work, they did piece together where they lived. They got the moped, the machete, the clothes. Unfortunately, not my watch. But the 2 men got 35 years custodial sentences between them.
Wow.
And currently serving that.
I mean, I'm stunned that the police arrived so quickly and that they were able to actually, get the evidence and prosecute and get that successful prosecution to absolute thugs off the streets. So glad that you are both alive to tell the tale. I can't imagine what you and your wife went through, the point at which a masked man, and we can see, if those who aren't seeing the footage, I mean, you described it brilliantly, all in black with a moped, with a weapon that large. You're thinking, well, what else are they going to use it for? It is extraordinary that that happens on the streets of Britain.
Well, yeah, it's an absolute disgrace, to be honest. It's on the rise under Mayor Khan. He's not taken this issue seriously for years. Last year, when this was happening, he blamed the hot weather and long school holidays. When we had that tragic incident in Bishopsgate where 3 people were stabbed, he said the good news was that it was not a terrorist attack. Unfortunately, there is no good news. And as a result of his failings, the government's had to step in with a further 3,666 police officers for London. They've introduced new legislation today, expanding the powers to seize weapons and the sentencing. And so the government's really having to step in where Mayor Khan, who's the head of the police, has failed.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's the Police and Crime Commissioner in London. Look, we see this, though, across the country as well. Labour have announced today, we don't have a Labour representative on, but they're looking at £100 million that they've already announced before. Again, to be fair, an awful lot of announcements on both sides are re-announcements, but efforts to try and tackle the issue of knife crime on our streets. And they're saying they will get a grip on knife crime. And they're basically saying that they are going to tackle it as well. But part of that will be a bespoke plan for every offender, including tags and curfews, cutting down the availability of those sort of knives that was used against you, but also interventions to help prevent people getting involved in knife crime in the first place. It's the fact that a lot of young people carry a knife because they think other people are carrying knives and they're at risk themselves. That's the issue. But as opposed to thugs like that who've got a knife deliberately to go out and target people to steal their goods.
Well, yeah, I mean, Labour just don't have a proper plan on this issue. It's very vague. In true Labour fashion, they talk about spending more money on an extra layer of bureaucracy to introduce more schemes. The reality is we've got an incredible network for educating our young people in this country. We've got great families, community groups, religious groups, sports, drama, music, schools, all of which are educating our young people.
Yeah, but those kids aren't involved in any of that. Half of these kids are truants. They're not involved in any of that stuff.
I know, but there are outreach schemes, boxing gyms, music facilities, religious groups, and also just family units, where we are educating young people. We've got to get away from the idea that it's cool to carry these weapons. The reality is that my life wasn't ruined by my incident. Yeah. People whose life was ruined were the 2 people who did this to me, who are now going to spend at least the next 10 to 12 years each in prison. I think young people need to get that message that by carrying these knives, you risk ruining your own life. And tragically, if you kill somebody or you seriously injure them, you'll ruin their life as well. There is no happy ending to carrying these weapons.
No, indeed. Councillor Andrew Dinsmore, I'm glad you're alive and well. I mean, sod the watch. It doesn't matter in the big scheme of things, but glad you and your wife are well. Thank you very much for coming on to talk to us about that. Chris Parry, still with us. I mean, for those who didn't see the footage, if you're listening, I mean, it's really quite harrowing, and especially seeing his wife collapse. I also, do you know what? I do love it when a man will say, like, you know, he's just been threatened. And your big fear, though, is that, you know, your wife's going to be attacked. Again, we talked about this, the alpha male, you know, looking, you know, that, you know, we like a bit of that, that's all I can say. But that's absolutely harrowing. I mean, I would have collapsed of that, the shock of that. But this is happening to people. I know round my way in North London, there's a lot of ladies with some very expensive watches and handbags, and the moped riders grabbing these things. You know, it's been really quite terrifying for a lot of people. And people, you know, people have a right. You've done well in life. You want to buy a nice watch or a nice handbag, you've got every right to wear it on the street and not expect someone to come and rip it off you. Do you think that any of the parties have got to grips with this?
No, of course not. I mean, it's interesting looking at that clip. That wouldn't have happened randomly. There would have been a reconnaissance by that team before it happened. And one of the things I always say to my friends...
Because there were other people walking along the street, weren't there?
But be vigilant. I mean, two things struck me there. One is that won't have been the first pass by that team. So, you know, when people wear headphones, you're actually denying yourself sensory perception of what's going around.
I've always said to my daughter and friends as well, you know, you've got gut instinct for a reason. It really does keep you safe.
Don't disable it.
Yeah, but just any feeling that like something's not right, act on that.
And the second thing about that is those guys look dodgy. Now, if we've got police out on the beat, they're actually patrolling.
Masked men all in black on a motorbike.
And something sticking out the side of their jacket. They look dodgy. And if we have more active patrolling going on our streets, this sort of thing could be closed down.
Also, I see teenage, but it's amazing how many people, you see elderly people in the masks at the moment. Again, they're still not doing you any good. And then you see these young people, young lads walking around in a gang, and half of them have got their face masks. And you're like, really? You concerned about COVID, are you, darling? I mean, really?
Yeah.
And you just think, I'm sorry. Again, one of the reasons I don't like masks is this idea that that we are, you know, basically making it normalising, covering your faces. Now, my question to you today is about the government's new social housing scheme, British Homes for British Workers. I do want to know, do you welcome this and why? But I have a funny feeling a lot of you are going to want to get in touch about this and about this sentencing. Now, I know that we've got the victim statements coming live from Nottingham right now, involving the families of those three who got murdered. I think let's go across live now to Nottingham at Crown Court and hear what they are having to say.
2022 for a vicious attack on a police officer, such a violent assault that he was tasered. To the Assistant Chief Constable, Rob Griffin, who finally released this information publicly yesterday, I say this: you have blood on your hands. If you had just done your jobs properly, there's a very good chance my beautiful boy would be alive today. There is so much more to say, and clearly serious questions regarding this case and events leading up to this monster being out in society. But for today, our darling son, his dear friend Grace, and a wonderfully kind grandfather Ian have been stolen from us forever and let down by the very system that should have been protecting them.
That was, of course, Emma Webber, the mother of the victim, Barnaby Webber. Now we're going to be hearing from the father of Grace. This is Dr. Sanjoy Kumar. Let's hear what he has to say.
They are the definition of strength and unity. My heart also goes out to Wayne Burkett, Marcin Goronsky and Sharon Miller, victims that have also been affected by this heinous crime. The letter of the law was once considered the most important rule to live and abide by, put upon us to make the country a fair and safer place. Now they're just a cautionary tale where the calculated, cold, brutal killing spree can be reduced down to something that falls within the same sentencing restrictions and guidelines as that of death by dangerous driving. If this man was not stopped when he was, this could have been one of the most catastrophic attacks this country had ever seen. This man is a killer. Murder was the only thing he cared about, and he fulfilled this in horrific fashion on Tuesday the 13th of June last year. My family has suffered a great loss. The children who my father had a positive impression on have suffered a great loss. The city of Nottingham has suffered a great loss. The fails from the police, the CPS, the health service have resulted in the murder of my father and these 2 innocent students. The NHS mental health trusts have to be held accountable for their failures along with the police. All we can do is hope that in due course some sort of justice will be served. This man has made a mockery of the system and he has got away with murder.
That was actually James Coates, the son of Ian Coates, the 65-year-old caretaker. Now we are going to be hearing from Grace O'Malley Kumar's father, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, outside Nottingham Crown Court.
We will never come to terms with the loss of our beloved daughter Grace and how she lost her life, her heroic actions. She was a gift to us and she was a gift to the country. We'd like to thank our wonderful family from London and Ireland and all of our friends for their continued love and support. Whilst we have never questioned this man's diagnosis, the lack of toxicology, contemporaneous mental health assessment, as well as missed opportunities to divert his lethal path will forever play on our minds, and this requires further review. We will look for answers regarding missed opportunities to intervene and prevent this horrendous crime. Thank you.
We got some extraordinary statements there from the grieving families of those who were killed by this man in Nottingham on this knife rampage last year. Those are extraordinarily powerful statements, Chris Parry. I could just read out some of what was said in court, actually, the victims' impact statements read out in court at the court, and they are really very, very damning. As Valdo Calocane was in court to be sentenced and told he would face being taken to a hospital. He was sentenced to a hospital order. The families said, well, you know, they told exactly what they thought of it. Ian Coates' son, we just heard from there, told the knifeman, you claim the voices told you to kill these innocent people, but listen to me, kill yourself. There was applause in the courtroom for that. The father of Grace O'Malley Kumar, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, said, it is clear to see you planned your attack. You have deceived psychiatrists who have based their opinion on partial diagnosis and reports, something he also touched on outside court. Her mother also said, you have violence in your soul and the fact you have no convictions is irrelevant as you killed my daughter while on warrant for violent offences. Grace's younger brother, James Kumar, also spoke out, says, all I can do to be close to her is to go to sleep with her University of Nottingham T-shirt on my pillow, and that is the closest I will be to her. And the father of Barnaby Webber, David Webber, said, my final comment to you, this was in court to the killer, my final comment to you is I believe in karma and what goes around comes around. I hope you get all you deserve for the rest of your life. Now, these comments these reactions, completely understandable. They're very different to often what we hear from people who forgive particularly their child's killer. They try and offer forgiveness to move on. There is so much anger among these families, and I can understandably say at the person who took their children's lives, but also at the authorities for accepting this downgraded plea of manslaughter when he violently, in a frenzied attack, stabbed their children, and in this case, the father, the caretaker, to death. They're right to be angry, aren't they?
Well, what I detect from the victim statements and those statements we just heard there, Julia, is that these 3 families doubt that the justice system has the competence to deal with this case, and they are very disappointed. They're not going to get closure as a result of this, and the whole point of justice is that obviously the community has to get retribution. There has to be some way of actually saying, you know, this is a heinous crime. I mean, I'm sitting here incredibly angry myself at the fact that we have a community that can't actually protect innocent people.
Two young people on their way home from a party after celebrating their exams, a caretaker on his way to work.
But there's very clear coding in what they've said there. They're saying you don't have the competence to deal with this.
Yeah.
at any level.
And also no challenge in court, because again, there would have been a challenge in court if there had been if the authorities CPS had refused to accept, the court refused to accept his plea to a lower grade offence, manslaughter, basically diminished responsibility because of his paranoid schizophrenia. But they had actually said, no, we're going to bring you to trial for murder. Then his claim that it was diminished responsibility, his claim that it wasn't premeditated, would have been challenged in court, and he could face life behind bars in prison as opposed to in hospital. Now, for a lot of us, we'll say, look, as long as he's off the streets, fine. But the reality is we don't know when he'll be off the streets. The judge did not give a whole life order. I don't know if it's possible for him to do that. You are a dangerous man. You have no business being on the streets. Or are they going to say, well, actually, if he takes his medication in 10 years' time, he's probably safe to come out. And then he can do it again. This is where people feel the authorities are always looking out for the criminal as opposed to the victim.
Yeah, and what is screaming at us from these messages is we can't get closure, and this punishment does not fit the crime.
No. You know what? I salute the families here for not doing the thing that people expect them to do, say, well, we forgive him, or they, no, this was my kid. You know, it was my father. I mean, you've got a right to be angry, and you've got a right to be angry not just at the man who took their lives too soon, but and in such a brutal way, but to be angry at the authorities who did nothing to prevent that loss of life, and to be angry at the authorities who would do nothing to get you the proper justice you deserve in this country. So, I mean, all credit to the family for speaking out. I mean, our hearts go out to them. The pain they must be
too.
Very dignified. But you know what? Anger and wanting, punishment is a completely appropriate and moral and good response to someone doing that to your family member. We should stop expecting everyone to sort of this turn the other cheek stuff. No, you don't turn the other cheek when someone's done that to your child or your dad.
And also there's an idea they've been cheated by the system.
Cheated by the system, exactly. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm sure you've got a reaction as well. Get in touch on whatever you want to talk about.